Sherry, I can't believe this is where we're going to start this episode. I can't believe most of what I've been learning for the past couple of weeks. But we are going to start by talking about the Epstein stuff. So let this serve as a trigger warning right off the top. We are going to talk about the Epstein stuff, which means we are going to talk about child rape. I can't believe those words are coming out of my mouth. But we're not going to spend the whole episode on it. We're going to spend a few minutes on it. But I think to ignore it completely would be a huge mistake given the situation that our country and our world is in, and giving the connection to addiction, which is what this podcast is about. And I'll explain that in detail as we get through it. But I just want to start by saying, if you haven't been paying close attention, you might not realize that this is the biggest disaster to impact our country since probably the Civil War. In our lifetime, Sherry, this is the second time something was so impactful that it'll change the American way of life. The first was 9/11, the September 11th attacks, and this is much bigger than that. And again, if you haven't been paying close attention, you might be listening to this first minute of conversation and wondering if I've been fitted for my tinfoil hat yet. I realize how I sound. I realize that I sound like a conspiracy theorist. And trust me, I make fun of those people all the time. I wouldn't talk this way so publicly if I wasn't convinced. And I know that's what all conspiracy theorists say. And I wrestle with this a lot. Sherry, what do you think? Am I making too much of this?
I don't think that you're making too much of this. I don't understand why there aren't more media outlets that are not making much of this. I don't know if that's the right way to say it. I guess I'm just shocked. Yeah, I'm just shocked that there are other things that are newsworthy. The Super Bowl halftime show. Other like missing persons, and I just feel like it's a distraction. Yeah, it's a distraction, and it just seems so vast and so crazy that it seems unimaginable.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's where we are with a lot of people, that like it's just too big to imagine that this is actually going on, and so they don't really like dive into it or like search out the information, or then part of me is a conspiracy theorist too, thinking, oh my gosh, is ABC and CBS and NBC and CNN and MSNBC not covering this? And Fox. I'm just trying to think of all the ones that, that are out there. Like, they're not covering it because they've been told not to cover it, because it seems like everybody is implicated. Both sides, everywhere, all over the world, are implicated in some of these Epstein files and emails and documentation and witness statements.
Very powerful people control the mainstream media outlets. And if someone had said that to me 2-3 weeks ago, I'd be like, oh my God, here's the conspiracy theory. But wow. Because looking for explanations for why it gets semi-buried by the mainstream is hard. I mean, there have been massive lawsuits. These very powerful people file big lawsuits. I know specifically about the one, well, I don't know the exact amount. I remember ABC was sued for something Stephanopoulos said, and ABC settled, and it was in the millions or $1 million or something like that. And so I think the independent media, the people flying below the mainstream, feel more like safety in numbers, maybe, talking about it. I don't know. That perplexes me too. That bothers me. I agree. I think there are 3 things we need to talk about. We need to talk about that this is not politics. We need to address the way it feels like conspiracy, and we need to talk about addiction. And then we'll move on to our topic. So first of all, if you think Epstein is about politics, you really do need to bring yourself up to speed. Over 1,200 girls were raped or otherwise sexually abused. An unknown number of people were murdered. The perpetrators are largely the billionaire class on all sides of politics. This is not a political topic. Second, to address the conspiracy angle, some of the QAnon stuff that I laughed off with the majority of Americans as crazy conspiracy theory, as, whack job lunacy, some of the QAnon stuff was right. The pedophile ring run and protected by powerful people, that actually happened. As I understand it, the main areas where the QAnon folks were wrong was in believing it was one political ideology rather than a much larger conspiracy that it actually was. And so, again, this is not political.
Everybody.
Both sides, everybody, however you want to say that, are obviously everybody's not involved, but people from all angles are involved. And so I laughed off the QAnon whack job hoax. Why do I believe now that it's actually the biggest scandal in the history of our country? It's because of Ro Khanna, who's a Democrat congressman from California, and Thomas Massie, a Republican congressman from Kentucky. They are reporting on their conversations with victims and survivors. They've talked to the survivors. Listen, everything I know about the devastating impact of emotional abuse and being the partner of an alcoholic comes from the survivors. I learned about this stuff in grad school, but I absorbed it when I saw the faces, the eyes, heard the voice quivers, saw the anxiety, witnessed the tears of the survivors. I can hear in Ro Khanna's voice that he's been changed by the conversations with the survivors, just like I was. So I believe that as bad as what Khanna and Massie are reporting, I believe they believe it. And I believe it too.
So when you're talking about the survivors, you're talking about those that are within our group that we've met. So you have a lot of experience with knowing how it is to be a victim, to be a survivor in a relationship where physical and emotional and addictive behaviors take place.
Yeah, it was crazy.
This is something you make up and you hear it repeated, and you can see the change, the physical change in a person.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is when I only heard it from you, I didn't get it. I thought, oh, my wife's exaggerating. My wife's over the top. I've married a wacko. Sorry, I don't believe that anymore. But then I heard it from the first kind of group of people we met. And then I heard it from everybody we met. One example is when you used to say you could tell if I'd been drinking or not. And I'd say, oh, no, you can't. I'm better at hiding it than that. Every single survivor of alcoholism as the partner that we met, every single one of them has a tell for their partner when their partner had been drinking. Not even when their partner was drunk, just when they were drinking. So the degree to which we used to talk a lot on the podcast about universalisms, that term. The degree to which it's universal is overwhelming evidence. It's amazing to me. Yes, it's anecdotal. Yes, these are case studies versus an academic institution-run research project. But it's undeniable, and I think that's exactly what's happened with Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie. They've just sat in the room with these survivors so many times and heard different details of the exact same emotional story, and it's changed them. And I believe them. So the third thing we want to talk about is how all of these people who suffer from power addiction ended up raping children or witnessing the rape and or exploitation of children, or kept quiet about what they knew about the rape and exploitation of children. Okay, addiction needs to be constantly fed. When someone with an addiction to power reaches the highest echelon of wealth and power, they need something more. The addiction needs an input to release the dopamine hit. For people with easy access to everything money can buy, and with no one to tell them no to anything they want, they lack any kind of friction, any kind of resistance in their lives. They need stimulation, and for a while, a big real estate deal that gives them more money or more power, that will work. But even that becomes easy. And eventually, there are limits to the degree to which that feels satisfactory, that releases dopamine. It's just like when I was drinking, my tolerance built. And eventually a 12-pack of beer was not enough for me. Just like that for these rich and powerful men, another deal, more money, another yacht, etc. It just won't do it. Their power addiction develops a huge tolerance. And you might think that the leap to participating in the Epstein scandal is an unimaginable leap. And it is unimaginable to you and I. But let's break it down in a way that makes it more understandable from their perspective, to the best ability of us to do that. So there are two parts to becoming bored with all of their power and transitioning their power addiction into something as despicable as pedophilia. The first is as simple as a herd mentality. And I'm going to describe it with a personal story in a way that I think is more relatable. When I was in college, my best friends and I messed around with this VHS video camera, and we were recording our own conversations like we had something important to say. We were just goofing around, making jokes, and we would take it on location. We'd go on campus with it. We would do it in our room. Like, we just were messing around. And I don't remember how it started, but somewhere along the lines, we were a half dozen white guys, and we started using the N-word in our recordings. Now, we did not, believe it or not, use it in a derogatory way. We never called anyone the N-word. We didn't call each other the N-word the way, you see black people use that word amongst themselves and they just throw it around. I'm not passing any judgment on that. I'm just saying that isn't what we were doing. We weren't calling each other that. We weren't calling other people that. We certainly weren't calling black people that. We were just saying the word. You can tell how uncomfortable I am. I've never told this story before. But it was not being used in a derogatory way. We just dropped it because doing so was naughty. And we were pushing boundaries. And we had the intellect of late teen and early 20s men with underdeveloped prefrontal cortexes. There I go, making an excuse. But it was 100% herd mentality. We knew that word was not for us, but we used it anyway. We felt a sense of camaraderie, a protection from the herd. And I've regretted it for 30 years, and I am truly sorry. Now, a billionaire pedophilia ring is about 1 billion times worse than what we did. But they felt about 1 billion times more protected, more entitled. They had to push the boundary that much further to get the hit of dopamine for their naughtiness. They had been able to say any words they wanted without the slightest hint of repercussions for decades. They needed a much bigger no-no, and the herd made them feel justified. So again, this is unimaginable to all of us, but let's try imagining. You finally reach the status to get invited to your first Epstein Island party. While you drink and rub elbows with the world's most powerful people, they start parading naked teenage girls through the party. Like I said before, if you're not kind of up to speed on what's coming out, this is part of it. Parading naked teenage girls, kind of like a buffet through the party. Everyone else is enjoying this sick entertainment. The herd. In order to push back, it takes a prioritization of the difference between right and wrong. It takes having a solid value system. It takes having empathy for these poor children. And it takes the courage to stand up to that herd and declare that what you're seeing is wrong and to do whatever it takes to protect those girls. But here's the thing. People with a power addiction, they prioritize power over knowing right from wrong, over their values, over empathy, over courage. Sherry, I know I'm going back and forth between me and the billionaire class, but how many times have you called me selfish and declared that I chose booze over you and the kids? A lot, right?
Yeah, countless.
Countless. This is no different. Men addicted to power choose protecting their power, protecting their addiction over protecting children to whom they had no connection. So that's the first part. But being in a party and witnessing this, there's a big leap to raping kids, and I understand that. Jeff Gunther is a licensed professional counselor with a ton of experience and a massive following as Therapy Jeff. He explains that there's a difference between a psychologically diagnosable pedophilia and the Epstein child rapists. He explains that there are people who have sexual urges about prepubescent boys and girls, and in many cases spend their entire lives in treatment resisting their urges. He says that in many, many cases, they are successful and they never offend. In the case of the Epstein child rapists, this is about power. If you have already accumulated the most imaginable power, the only way to get the dopamine hit is to cross lines of civility and do things that normal people cannot do. It is the ultimate exertion of power to rape children. I know I sound like a conspiracy theorist to you because of how sick a person would have to be to cross that line. That is what addiction does to people. In my case, it meant gaslighting and emotionally abusing you because I needed my booze and you were trying to stand in my way. In the case of people who have accumulated power that literally does not even register for you and me, their addiction pushes them to do things that does not even register to you and me. I want to be clear, just because I'm explaining my understanding of it, it does not mean that I think they should go to some cushy billionaire addiction rehab facility. I think the child rapists should go someplace a billion times worse than jail for the rest of their miserable lives. This is an incredibly heavy start to our conversation, but this is an incredibly dark period in human history to which we are just beginning an awakening. A few weeks ago, I was still saying to you, pedophilia, that's the red line that's going to bring Trump down? None of the other manifestations of his power addiction matter to MAGA? I did not begin to understand the magnitude. I'm just starting to understand, and my life will never be the same. Okay, before we introduce our conversation topic for today, Sherry, let's remind our listeners about our upcoming Ask Laura session. This is going to try to serve as some sort of a segue. Later this month, we will interview Laura Hammock for our quarterly Ask Laura episode of the Untoxicated podcast. Listener, what do you want to ask Laura? Laura Hammock is a licensed clinical social worker and a mental health therapist. She works with adults, both individuals and couples, working through the impacts of anxiety, depression, ADHD, addiction, obsessive compulsive disorder, bipolar disorder, trauma, and relationship issues. What question do you want to ask a therapist if only you had a relationship with a therapist? Or maybe you want a second opinion about the therapist you have. Ask Laura. Send your question via email to matt@soberandunashamed.com with Ask Laura in the subject. That's matt@soberandunashamed.com for Ask Laura. Excuse me. Okay, let's jerk this thing into reverse while we're still going 30 miles an hour in the forward direction. Let's talk about something with a little bit of a humorous overtone, which feels completely wrong, but let's do it anyway. Let's talk about Midwest resentment stuffing, Sherry.
Alrighty.
Let's set the stage for our listeners. We drive 16 hours into the Midwest from where we live in the Rocky Mountain West. And the people we drive to see can't even be bothered to get off the couch to give us a hug. Is that a lack of enthusiasm? What do you think that is when we've experienced that?
I feel like I've thought about it many times over the years, and part of me feels many, many different things. Like jealousy has been one that has popped up.
Because they wish they had that 16 hours on I-70?
No, like jealousy that, oh, now you're here and I've got to drop everything. And you act like you're such a big deal coming in. This is for one particular person mostly in my life. That, others are just like, I don't even know. Like, oh, you think that to show excitement for somebody that would come, or to be excited to see somebody, like, I think that's just too much vulnerability. Like it's just too much emotion
Yeah.
to kind of show that. Or it's like they're nonchalant about it. Like, oh, hey, and they saunter out a little bit if they do, you know. I mean, they don't want to come enthusiastically running up to you like little kid would.
Yeah.
You know, even though that's maybe how they feel inside. It's just too much emotion, too much vulnerability to be enthusiastic about a visit.
What about guilt? This might be hitting you for the first time.
Yeah, I never thought about it.
So we often go into the Midwest to see our people. Our people almost, not ever, but almost never come west to see us. Do you think there's any piece of it that's guilt for not reciprocating?
When I think about my family, I don't think it's guilt.
Okay.
I think it is like, you're the one that chose to move far away.
Okay.
So it's your responsibility to come to us in a lot of ways, even though we live in a much cooler and better and nicer and prettier and hipper place than my family lives. I mean, if you've listened to the podcast a long time, you kind of can figure out, like, it's a small town Midwest. So I don't think it's guilt for them not showing up. Maybe for people like our friends, like his guilt is that we've come to this event, to them, to see them, to be with them, and they've not reciprocated. So maybe there's a level of guilt for some of the people.
I like to think that that's what it is, because it makes me feel better about someone not getting their fanny off the couch to say hello.
And some of the people couldn't get their fannies off of the couch because of ailing and aging and, you know.
Now, I do want to say the opposite is also true. When we drive into the Midwest to see our friends and family, there are people that we go to see that have overwhelming enthusiasm and greet us with lots of big squeezy hugs. Mm-hmm. And so we shouldn't overgeneralize. But if I'm just thinking, if our listeners have ever experienced this, where you're like, oh, I came to see you, and you have dinner plans with your friend that you see every Tuesday. You couldn't cancel that this one Tuesday to come see me. I'm wondering if people will relate to that. But both sides of it are true. That's for sure. And I also want to acknowledge that we know this is not just a Midwest thing. Our experience is that it's a very Midwest thing. And I'm sure there are people like, well, that happens out here in Oregon too. Or that's the exact experience that I have here in, Nova Scotia or Liverpool or whatever.
Okay.
That happens here in Bangladesh.
Okay.
I don't know. Do we have any listeners in Bangladesh? I know the other places are legit.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know about listeners from Liverpool or Bangladesh or...
Well, I know there's some from the UK.
But I'm just saying, like, do you mean like the stuffing or the not getting up and not being enthusiastic?
I just think
enthusiastic greeting.
I think it would be naive of us to say, oh, this is just a Midwest thing. It's kind of like, you know what it reminds me of? We meet a lot of people who say they work in a field that has a heavy drinking culture. Their career has a heavy drinking culture. And it always makes me laugh when someone says that to me, because I'm like, every career has a heavy drinking culture. We've met doctors and construction workers, every kind of small business for sure, military, oil and gas, politics, sales, accounting. It kind of doesn't matter what you do, blue collar, white collar, caregiving professionals, or people that spend all their day trying to make the most amount of money.
You forgot restaurants and
huge in restaurants.
Yeah.
Service
industry, kitchens, yeah. I wonder if it'd be quicker to do a list of things that don't have a big...
I think monks. Well, no, that's not true.
I was going to say, there are beer making and wine making monks.
What is that? Robin Hood. All the Robin Hood depictions have a drunk monk in them, don't they? Yeah.
I think he's just like the clergy person. I don't necessarily know if he's a friar. And I know in the animated Disney Robin Hood, he's friar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. You're right. It would be easier to list the...
But yeah, you can't even say pastors. Like there's...
Oh, God, no.
Like religious leaders, they're all,
Yeah.
Can't say... Yeah, there's not much I can think of.
Well, part of it, I think, is because we work in alcohol addiction. So we would have to think of a profession that we've never seen before and then do a little research to find out if they drink a lot. But yeah, I think that would be tough. Anywhere with stress and pressure or ease and boredom, alcohol will be prevalent. Alcohol is used for
those
everything.
Are just the opposites.
Yeah.
Opposite. Well, it's just everywhere.
That's why it's everywhere. It medicates anything. It medicates hard things and it medicates boring things. So when we talk about Midwest resentment stuffing, we know it takes place everywhere too. We want you to feel inclusive, even if you've never lived in the Midwest. Although I think everyone, for at least 2 years of their life, needs to live in the Midwest. There's some good things and some challenging things that you would take from that experience.
I think it'd be
definitely
a
good
educational
things too.
experience.
Absolutely. Okay, so Sherry, my first question for you: How was it that you became comfortable stuffing things down rather than talking things out? Do you have a sense for the origin of your stufferness?
Stuffingness, please.
Stuffingness?
Stuffing.
Oh, let me write that down.
Yes, INGNESS. Stuffingness. I think that it was an environment that I grew up in a lot of ways. I think that it was a learned behavior. I think as I realized that I was kind of the child that was supposed to provide the levity and the love compared to my sister, who was the quote unquote troublemaker and hard child and hard toddler and hard infant. Like, I had to be that. So to say something negative or to show displeasure would have possibly upset the family dynamic. So stuffing that complaint was the way I kept peace and made others happy. So early on, being a bit of an obliger. Also, the environment, like even if I was just, a 6 or 7 year old playing in the room next to adult family members,
Mm-hmm.
I could hear them complain about other people in our circle, whether it's a family member or a friend. I know that people talk about people, and I know you have to have conversations with people about others.
Is this also a Midwest specialty, or do you think this happens everywhere too?
I'm sure it happens everywhere.
Okay.
But like the amount that people would talk negatively about someone, and then maybe the next week or even later that afternoon, they would be there and there was like nothing that was brought up.
Yeah.
Like, it was just all fake smiles and hugs, and then like they would turn their back, the person would, the offender, quote unquote, the offender would turn their back, and then someone would have an eye roll or a shrug their shoulders like, oh, what are you going to do? They're just a dick, but we're not going to talk about it.
Yeah. In front of them, they're welcomed into the conversation, and not even a hint of like,
I mean, you might be going a little too far.
Okay.
I mean, they're going to be sitting on the couch when that person comes in. They're going to be like, hey, how you doing? They throw their hand up, and they're not going to get up and welcome them. And
okay.
Like, so they are going to have a hint, but it's going to be a passive-aggressive hint.
Oh.
So it's a little bit of blaseness, like, you're here. But they're not going to confront or address an issue that you've had with that person. Does that make sense?
Yes, passive aggressiveness was invented in the Midwest, from what I hear. That's what my research says.
Did it say that?
Yeah. Yeah.
All of your good research.
That's right. I love my experience with this. So when I married into your family, it was such a stark difference. My family is different. I didn't say better. I said different. I want to be clear. But I can remember sitting in the room with, let's say, 8 people, and then one of the 8 leaves, and the 7 that remain just rip that 8th person apart. And I remember the first time I got up to walk out of the room, I was like, oh my God, they're ripping me to shreds in there. I just know they are. And it was like this big epiphany for me. And so I just never left a room again because I can't handle it.
You just wore Depends.
I'm not stable enough.
Didn't ever get up to go to the bathroom.
That's right. I was always the last man. I sat on that couch until I had the imprint in my ass, and my ass was imprinted on the couch, and I wasn't leaving.
Yeah.
Okay. there is some estrangement in your family. Do you think that the estrangement comes from masterclass stuffing? Like there's some conflict and one or both parties aren't going to address it, so I guess we're just not talking anymore.
Yes, masterclass stuffing. Masterclass in not having accountability. For like righting the wrongs that happened. Like usually it started out over something fairly small and then it just became this resentment and it grew and grew and grew and built and built and built up until there was the estrangement. Like there had been snide comments, there had been passive aggressive behaviors. Like it's just, and it would be this accumulation of things.
So it starts with
finally someone splits.
It starts with an I'm right and you're wrong. So kind of a dug in, and then an accumulation of, like you said, passive aggressive or comments, and it just gets to be too much.
Yeah. And I don't even know if all the time like it had to be an I'm right and you're wrong sort of bigger deal.
Well, you said lack of accountability, so I was trying to type. Okay. I was thinking that through.
Yeah, so I guess, and that didn't always have to be the start.
Okay.
You know? It could just be, that could be one of the many things.
Okay.
I don't think there's an order, Matt. I don't think there's a true order to it, but maybe we can ask Jeff, the therapist.
Because I think he's really, really good. I think he's awesome. He's really, really good for me. He doesn't return my contact.
But I think it's like a number of things. But the main thing is it's not about, and I know you like this word, confrontation. It's not about conversation or clearing the air or addressing the issue in the moment it happens or soon after. Maybe after feelings were a little less raw.
So it gets to the point where it's a rash, and then one person writes the other person off. Mm-hmm. And it's just kind of, I've weighed it. Confronting it and dealing with it sounds more painful than just writing you off and you're no longer part of my life. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And let me be clear. There are times when estrangement is the person who initiates the estrangement. It's their only option. Yeah. And so we're not necessarily anti-estrangement. We're just here to say that sometimes estrangement happens because of, like you said, Sherry, a lack of accountability, a lack of confrontation. Maybe, this sounds very condescending, but maybe a lack of maturity. Yes. Maybe a lack of emotional maturity.
Lack of emotional maturity.
We're important to each other. Let's work this through.
A lack of confidence, self-confidence, mm-hmm. to be able to speak up for yourself and clear the air and to be able to handle the way that it is received, because maybe it's not received well and you maybe don't have the ability to handle that poor behavior when you hoped that it would be something better.
Yes. Okay.
Oftentimes.
Sorry, go ahead.
And sometimes with the stuffiness.
I wrote it right here. You can look. Stuffingness.
But I think that there also is stuffedness.
Oh my God.
Because stuffedness also means like you stuffed it and stuffed it and stuffed it and stuffed it, and you haven't said anything, and then you explode.
Okay. Is that kind of like oblige or rebellion?
It's oblige or rebellion, and then that leads also to an estrangement.
Often when I go into the Midwest, I get stuffedness as well, but that's from just eating and pushing my feelings of frustration down, trying not to be passive aggressive.
One more bite of spiral ham.
Well, I'm like, I've got
cheesy potatoes.
I've got this great passive aggressive comeback that I would like to say, but I know how mean it is, so I'm just gonna put a wad of potato chips in my mouth. So stuffedness is protection as well. When we come back from talking about our sponsors, Sherry, I want to hear about kind of the backlash from my active addiction that you have felt and how your stuffing in our relationship was a form of self-protection. I've got a doozy of a question ready for you about that. But first, let's tell our listeners that we are sponsored by SoberLink. SoberLink is the premier remote alcohol monitoring system combining cutting-edge technology with compassionate design to support accountability in recovery and family law. It's the top-of-the-line handheld breathalyzer. Today we are talking about effective forms of confrontation. Stuffing leads to resentment. When we have needs, we have to express them or the unexpressed emotions will fester. And in a relationship where trust has been severely impacted, we need more than verbal acknowledgement about our needs. We need verification. And that's where SoberLink comes in. SoberLink is not just a handheld breathalyzer you can buy at the drugstore or on the internet, a cheapie that breaks or gives unreliable results. SoberLink's best-in-class service and product combination includes built-in facial recognition and tamper detection, expert in-house support, email daily, weekly, or monthly reporting that's court admissible in all 50 states and Canada, unlimited testing days, and scheduled testing to build accountability and trust. SoberLink is the right tool for verifying that our needs for a sober partner or our need for a sober co-parent are being met. Polite confrontation and accurate verification.
Let me tell you what SoberLink is to me. It's a sign that you are serious this time, that you hear me when I tell you I can't trust you, that you are willing to put aside your ego for a second and do something for me, for our family. SoberLink is an indication that you love me more, that you love the kids more, than you are as selfish about doing it your way.
Right now, SoberLink is offering Untoxicated podcast listeners a free offer ID valid for a $100 enrollment bonus. Go to soberlink.com/untoxicated.
Claim your offer ID for a $100 enrollment bonus. There is no commitment required to claim your offer ID while this promotion lasts. And you can use your $100 enrollment bonus when you are ready to place your order. To claim that offer ID, you will only be asked to provide your name and email address. No other personal details, no commitment, no credit card number. To claim your offer ID for a $100 enrollment bonus, please go to soberlink.com/untoxicated.
The Untoxicated podcast is part of a 501c3 nonprofit research organization.
We learn from you, our listeners, and we share with you what we learn. It is a growth and discovery oriented symbiotic relationship.
You like that line?
I do. A partnership, and there's nothing more important to our understanding about the impact of addiction and emotional abuse than hearing from you and about your instincts.
Right now, we are trying to learn more about your experiences with emotional safety and the opposite of emotional safety, emotional abuse. What role do your instincts play in navigating that? Whether you are wondering if you have experienced emotional abuse in your relationship, or you are wondering if your behavior could be considered emotionally abusive, we have a confidential, easy-to-take survey ready to help you better understand what you've experienced. Our survey will only take a minute or two to complete, and as I said, we will hold your responses in strict confidentiality.
Please go to untoxicatedsurvey.org to take the survey. As a thank you for participating in our research, we will share helpful resources, including a free ebook, and we will respond to you to share your feedback on your experiences.
We respond to each and every survey response directly and confidentially. We offer to meet with you, a 30-minute conversation that is absolutely free. We learn more about your situation, and if it feels like a good fit, we invite you to join us to learn and share and grow and evolve.
Free resources, including a free ebook, free feedback from us, and a free conversation with people who truly get it. Listen to your instincts and take our survey.
Please go to untoxicatedsurvey.org. Okay, Sherry, let's talk about backlash that has caused you to react in certain ways from me in my active addiction. In our relationship, was stuffing your emotions, stuffing your resentments, stuffing something that you otherwise would have talked to me about, was that a form of protection? Start with me in active addiction.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, good answer.
Yes, it was a form of protection in a lot of ways because in active addiction, you were very unreliable and you were not a safe space for me to process.
What does that mean? We talk about safety a lot. What does it mean when you say I wasn't a safe space?
When I would maybe bring something up to you that I wanted to share with you about how I was feeling, there was blame shifting or Darvo or just flat out name calling, telling me I was crazy, I was too particular, I expected too much, I was wrong. That would just be an easy answer. You're just wrong. I didn't say that. I didn't do that. You're making that up. That's not how I said it or did it or acted. So also, if I was emotionally charged and I was very immature, and during your active drinking days, my nervous system was very dysregulated. So for me to be able to be calm, cool, and collected and present the evidence to you and use the I feel like statements, I could get really rattled and very emotional and not be able to share with you in a way that didn't seem anything but confrontational or angry. So I was also I was kind of protecting myself from myself. Like not looking like the crazy lunatic who's coming in hot to address something where it could get easily twisted and manipulated. So protecting myself from you and your reaction, and protecting me from myself in my response and approach.
Talk about how it shifted in sobriety. So if we think of 3 kind of statuses, if you will, of our life: active addiction, early sobriety this time around where I actually made it over the hump, not the times in the past where I tried and relapsed and tried and relapsed. But so you talked about active addiction. Let's talk about early sobriety this time around, and then how it has changed in long-term sobriety.
Well, early sobriety this time around, I was pretty detached. And we heard a good word that described how I felt. The relationship with you had become very tedious.
Tedious.
You and I had a call and they used that word, and I was like, yes. It became very tedious to deal with you and your drinking, and I became detached. And then in the beginning of your sobriety, it was still very tedious because we had done this. This wasn't our first rodeo where you were like, I'm going to get sober, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Sorry, I'm using like a condescending voice.
I like it, actually.
So it became, so I was just, disconnected from you, detached. So I wasn't, and I also lost a lot of respect for you. So I wasn't going to share things with you.
Yeah.
I was going to just stuff it down. I wasn't going to talk to you about it. But in this time around, I ended up having a person that we've had on our podcast before. She and I became friends through our youngest sons. And so I had a place and an outlet. And then I had a couple other places where maybe I wasn't speaking the words like, oh, Matt's really struggling with sobriety and drinking or whatever, how I wanted to put it. But I had a place to process a lot of feelings that I had about resentment and lack of self-confidence and feeling inadequate.
Were those topics that you eventually also processed with me?
Eventually, yeah.
So it was like this is better than nothing.
Yeah.
But in order for the relationship repair to take place, you're going to need something more.
Yeah.
And so would we call that half-stuffed? Or am I just spending too much time with that stupid word?
Yeah, you're just spending too much time.
Am I being tedious, Sherry?
You are tedious a lot of times still, and I just tolerate you better. Yeah, so I had, it was like also like practice for me to like let a little bit of it leak out and become a little bit more mature about the way I spoke about things, and just to feel a little bit better about not carrying such a big, heavy load. So then when I saw that sobriety looked different and your attempts to sobriety looked different this time around, there was a bit of a shift, and I wanted to share, but I was so closed off and pulled back that I was very worried. I was also very angry and disappointed. Like, why are you doing this now? You could have done this years ago and saved ourselves from so much misery. So I felt like it was a little bit of punishment for you. I'm not gonna let you
for
in.
you to carry the resentment and continue to stuff it a little bit.
Yeah, but I'm like, I'm not gonna let you in. I'm not gonna let you know my stuff because maybe this isn't gonna work out, and I don't want you to have this arsenal of information and vulnerability.
The kind of stuff that I have traditionally turned against you.
Right, but I was like, do you deserve to have that piece of me now? Do you deserve to have that openness and vulnerability and honesty?
That's interesting. I understood the self-protection angle, but I've not really thought about it as being, kind of a, you don't deserve this, kind of almost retaliatory.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Like it was a little bit of a weapon. I felt like you definitely needed to earn a lot more back before I would offer up.
Yeah.
Also, and again, part of it was like there was still just so much hurt and pain, and I just didn't want it to come all charging out.
Well, that's interesting. If you think about a like highly charged situation, some of the anger is because you're totally activated, you're in fight or flight, you're in the moment, and you're ready to go to battle or whatever, right? And then it takes some time for that kind of top level angle to subside. And then the resentment's still there. And some of the resentment feels like anger for sure. But as long as that kind of top level anger is there, you can't communicate particularly effectively.
Right.
So some of the stuffing in that case was actually to my benefit, because if you had addressed every resentment that was building in the moment, it probably you'd have come in hotter than when you had time to settle a little bit. But eventually, we have to get away from the stuffing. You had to get away from the stuffing of emotions and resentments. And there's a little bit of a cycle that I want to run past you and get your feedback on. As far as the way it goes when it's not being handled and managed properly. But before I do, can I ask you a question? It might throw you way off. Do you think you can handle a curveball?
I don't know.
Did you see that fishing pole bounce by our window a minute ago?
The 2 fishing poles?
Oh, there were 2?
Yes.
Isn't it just crazy that it's February in Colorado and someone's going fishing? And not ice fishing.
Not ice fishing.
No.
Just regular fishing.
Going to stand in a short sleeve shirt on the shore and probably need to drink a soda to cool down because it's so hot here. I just thought that was funny.
Yeah.
Okay, so the cycle is there's a conflict. There's some huffiness between the parties. There is some period of no contact, which is when that really high anger gets to come down to something a little bit more reasonable. Maybe there's a half-ass apology. And then there's the water under the bridge kind of moment, with or without the apology. And then the move on and never speak of this conflict again. And the resentment definitely remains unprocessed. I'm not necessarily saying that that's what happened in our relationship, because I am such a pursuer, such a chaser. Like, I can't stand it if conflict isn't resolved to some degree. But I'm kind of shifting gears back to the title of the podcast, the Midwest resentment stuffing. When it comes to other relationships besides between you and me, I want you to respond to that cycle of conflict, huffiness, no contact, maybe or maybe not an apology, water under the bridge, move on and never speak of it again. Have you experienced that?
Yes, that is my role. The only thing you didn't add at the end of the cycle is then when I get really, really mad, everything under the sun that's unprocessed comes out.
Oh, the explosion.
The explosion.
Yeah. That's part of the cycle too.
Mm-hmm.
How does the cycle make you feel?
Ugh. Well, I mean, I guess because I had done it for so long that it felt comfortable. And I really don't like conflict. as you know, I don't like to address a situation. Maybe it's because I don't have enough self-confidence to stand up for myself, or I feel like I'm going to be told I'm wrong or I misunderstood. So almost slightly embarrassed if I feel like it's something that isn't worthy of confronting you about. Yeah, like you said, that the weirdness of the relationship between you and I that might be different than this is that you were the pursuer, you did like the conflict. You never gave me.
I wouldn't say I liked the conflict. Okay. I couldn't live without having the conflict.
Yes, resolved or
because
talked about.
I couldn't. I am very uncomfortable in the water under the bridge and move on.
Oh, I wish that sometimes there was more no contact in our relationship, but as a pursuer, that was only maybe 3 or 4 minutes at a time when there wasn't contact to like resolve.
But you have other relationships besides me,
yeah,
where this cycle has taken place. Pardon me. Maybe without the explosion at the end, where there's just been the water under the bridge, move on, never speak of it again. But you're just kind of a little bit low-level burning inside for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Well, and if there isn't the unprocessed, then that makes the next time this happens again, it elevates it to a level more intense than what it needs to be.
So when you talked about estrangement, you talked about sometimes it's a build. It's a everything is another brick in the wall of resentment, and eventually you've built a wall where you can't see the other person anymore, and guess we're kind of done.
Yeah. And the resentment or the not talking about it or the conflict being water under the bridge, that just makes it easier the next time there is a conflict. You're already standing on that, you know.
Okay.
So
let me ask you this. Is confrontation, as much as you hate it, is it the only answer to deal with the resentment?
Oh, I don't know if confrontation, I like conversation or some other word than confrontation, because confrontation is a little harsh, but I think addressing the issue is quite possibly one of the only answers, because either A, you're going to get an open, vulnerable conversation, or they're going to show you who they really are, and maybe that's not the kind of person that you really want to have an intimate relationship. And I mean, it doesn't have to be romantic.
Right.
But I mean, how close do you want to bring them in? How, you know, or maybe it's a lesson for yourself. Like, okay, well, they're not going to address it. They're not going to be vulnerable, but I'm going to be a good example of how I can be that for them. And maybe they will get comfortable in time.
How about if we say you want to politely, kindly, with empathy, confront the situation? Does that work better?
It doesn't matter.
Oh,
I mean, I'm just saying.
I wanted you to say yes, and then I was going to say confrontation and what did I say? Confront are the same word.
Yeah.
I tricked you.
Yeah, okay. Well, too bad I wasn't.
Too bad I didn't fool you. You never are. You never are.
But I mean, I just feel like, you know, inviting them into a conversation or resolution.
Okay, so you don't like the word confrontation, fine. But you have to address it with the person.
I think you have to address it with the person. Like I said, because I think you have like those different outcomes, and it's going to lead you to an answer, and you may not be comfortable with it, and you're going to have to deal with that. This person really shows you who they are by their response and their reaction. And maybe it's not what you want and the outcome isn't what you want, but at least you're going to feel a little bit less guilty, and you're not going to feel resentful, and you're not going to be mad at yourself for avoiding a situation.
Sherry, if you think you're uncomfortable with confrontation, I'm going to bring up a word you're even more uncomfortable with, and that is compliment. You hate being complimented. But I do have to compliment you that in our relationship, you have made so much progress. When I say something is off, when I say, listen, I can just tell by the way you're talking, by the way you're treating me, by the way you're moving through the world that there's something wrong, you are much better at looking internally and not just saying, Nothing's wrong. You're full of shit. Why are you laughing?
I'm just thinking, the way you're talking, sorry, you got baby voice in my head. The way you're talking, the way you're treating me, the way, like I'm going around like just scowling at you and throwing rotten tomatoes, like when you walk in a room. But
I
you can
am
tell
very
you're sensitive.
thin-skinned,
Exactly.
and so it feels like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, oh, and it could be to anybody. Like, you know, the way I'm like answering questions, being a little more short and quick.
Right.
And
so when
irritable.
You're stuffing and I call you on it now, and, you know, I don't go, hey, you silly head, you're stuffing. Stop being such a turd face.
Stop being such a stuffer.
I say it very sheepishly. We talked about whether
Excuse
you
me.
stuff in self-preservation.
Ma'am.
I bring it, yeah.
Excuse me, ma'am. Is there something going on?
Yeah, that's how it feels. But because I don't want that obliger rebellion to come exploding out, like you said, explosion. Yeah. But when I call you on it and say, hey, listen, I can tell something's off. I don't know what it is, but do you think you know what it is? You are much better at looking internally, and you don't just say, no, you're full of shit. I'm fine. Leave me alone.
And sometimes I do say, no, everything is fine. And then I know that the word fine means things aren't fine. So then I have to think about it.
Is that the translation into Sherry?
Actually, I heard that on some little funny kind of meme. Like, and I guess maybe it wasn't funny. It was just like, what is like one of the worst responses that a woman could tell you? Like, how do you know like when a woman is not doing well? When she answers, I'm fine.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's true. I think sometimes I still want to push back against that when you say that. Because, you know, there's always something every day, right? So you don't want to sound like a complainer either. That's part of it, being stoic and not complaining. Well, I'm not dead yet.
Yeah, but
that's the kind of that Midwest mentality. Like,
yeah,
I can't complain about what I'm really feeling because it's so small and inadequate compared to someone else who's fighting cancer or whatever. You know, so sometimes my inclination is very much like, no, there's nothing wrong.
Yeah,
I'm just irritable today, or I'm just a little tired, or I got a little headache. But why do I have the headache? Is it stress? Is there something else going on? Is it you? Is it, you know, the kids? Is it the world? Is it the car? You know, whatever.
Back to my compliment. When I say is, you know, what's going on, I can tell something is off. Sometimes, yes, you still push back, but other times, more often than not, more often than ever at any time in our relationship prior, you will take a minute, you'll think about it, and you'll come up with something. Mm-hmm. And say, Matt, I think it's this. And as your person, I feel like that is a great opportunity for you to tell me something, even if it's small and should be, in the grand scheme of things, considered to be, you know, minor and not a big deal. You'll say it, and we will usually move on, and you'll be out of that mood, and things are much better. Mm-hmm. Do you accept that compliment? Do you see that you do that much better now?
Yes, I think I do that much better now.
Yeah. Okay, so does having that conversation, I use the word confrontation, do you use a different word, addressing it, whatever, in a situation where there's emotional safety like there is in our relationship now for the very most part, does that lead to resentment processing, actually dealing with the thing and making it go away?
A lot of times, yes. I mean, I also think that maybe it's not a resentment spacing, it's a resentment preventing. You know, like so if it hadn't been spoken about and discussed, then it could have built up.
So if it's something that's happened recently enough that it hasn't kind of evolved from incident to resentment,
or repeated offense, that then becomes the resentment because, you know, someone hasn't been confronted about it, and it just keeps continuing, but that's my fault for not like bringing it up. But then I'm not like looking at it that way. Like, I should have brought it up a long time ago because now I'm frustrated or resentful of this.
Yeah.
So
we have a very good, better than I ever expected, emotional and physically intimate relationship. Better than I ever imagined. And I feel like you and I confronting the issues between us, the resentments, the budding resentments, the trauma from my drinking, new stuff that arises, conflict when it comes to parenting or just anything, right? Our ability to confront that in an environment with emotional safety is what leads to that really great emotional intimacy and sexual intimacy that we have. Do you support or deny that assertion?
I do support that. I feel like with all that you mentioned, there is that vulnerability and trust that was never there before.
Mm-hmm.
And that we're both taking an active part in the sexual intimacy, in being able to communicate in a way that doesn't feel like it's judging or condemning or I don't know, I can't think of another word, but
okay.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so I think it's so important, the confrontation. We meet lots of people who self-describe as being stuck in their own recovery. Often there's sobriety that has taken place in the relationship, but as we talk about all the time, sobriety is just a prerequisite. It just gets the alcohol out of the way so you can see what's underneath. People need to do the individual work, for sure, of recovery, and emotional safety is definitely necessary. But the third piece of it, there's individual work, there's emotional safety. The third piece is to confront the resentments, which are really traumas. And if we don't do that, we stay stuck. When we work with folks that feel stuck, I feel like there's two reasons. Part of it is a natural process. Part of it is moving from thing A that you're working on to moving to thing B. And there's a period of time between where the transition, it feels like being stuck. Okay? So let's use an example. Let's say you have, let's start with sobriety. Let's say you and your partner have worked together through detachment and communication and whatever, and the partner has found sobriety. And you're like, okay. And while you're taking a breath and you're trying to figure out how you are going to enforce a boundary around which there will be total emotional safety in the relationship, figuring that out, that period feels a little bit like stuckness. But that's a temporary transitory period of stuckness. What I think we see a lot of, though, is people get up to the doorway of confrontation. It's time to address this with the person that they need to address it with, whether that's another family member, a partner, whatever, and they just can't get over the threshold. They can't have the confrontation, and they stay stuck. Do you see that in people? Do you think that's a thing?
Yes, I think that's a thing. And it's, because I feel like I was stuck for quite a while. Because it's a scary place to step out of that comfort zone, or even if it's not a comfort zone, it's a place where you've lived for so long that stepping outside of that is really frightening. And I know that there are still incidences where you and I have this emotionally safe relationship, but if it's something that's maybe not been presented on a regular basis and I get a little worried and anxious about how you're going to react about something, that I can fall easily back into old habits. So I think that is a place of stuckness, that just falling back into that old habits is a place of stuckness that,
Yeah.
That I hadn't really, like, that was kind of what was making, I was kind of thinking of that when you were talking, and it's not that I'm sorry I wasn't paying that much attention to what you were saying. It's just that popped into my head.
Do you think addressing it and confronting is the key to getting out of the stuck?
But yeah, and then realizing it, like admitting it, like that's what I mean. Like, I just thought of that because we had an incident recently where I was like, oh, I went back to that place of being like protective and resentful. And I realized, oh, and that's putting me back in that stuck sort of mode of not moving forward in a conversation in a way that we had addressed all these other things for lots and lots of days and months, and so yeah. And you have to be confronting with yourself. You have to be willing to have those like really hard conversations with yourself and not look at it like you're just protecting the other person in the relationship.
Yeah.
And I don't know how I'm trying to describe it.
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah. You've got to address your concerns, address your own traumas, but then eventually you've also got to express that.
Yeah.
And bring how you're feeling.
Like, show your own vulnerability.
Yeah.
To get you out of the stuckness, and not be so worried about how it's going to affect the relationship. But you're just being true to the relationship by showing your vulnerability and your honesty and the things that are concerning you.
Let's end with this. Let's talk to our listeners about, let's say you are resonating with this. You're feeling stuck. You've done some individual recovery, there's sobriety, or you've removed yourself from the relationship, so there's sobriety because you're not with that person anymore. Either way, there is emotional safety. You've established an environment of emotional safety, but there's this conflict, this resentment, this trauma, this piece that you need to address, and you feel like you're stuck at the doorstep of that and you can't move forward. Let's talk about some of the keys to what we have always called resentment processing. Confrontation would be another word. Addressing it would be another word. Let's talk about some of those keys. Do you want to what's the first advice you would give to someone if they're going to take that scary step and have that difficult conversation?
I think like doing one thing at a time, like one
resentment?
Yeah, one issue, one scenario at a time. Maybe not scenario, but like, the heart of the issue.
Yeah, one experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of people think of the amends process as resentment processing, and I would argue that it's not. Because, yes, often in resentment processing, in confrontation, an apology it fits very well. It's very helpful. But some people, like you, are married to or in relationship with someone who was a chronic apologizer. I would apologize, and then a couple of weeks later, I'd repeat that same damn behavior, and the apology was useless. So when it comes to resentment processing, apology is one thing. There are other people out there that we've met who've never been apologized to ever during the course of the drinking. And for them, an apology is like gold, man. They would love that apology. So that it doesn't not deserve a place in the conversation, but it's not adequate. What's the thing that you need more than an apology as far as being able to move past the resentment?
So, like, validation that my experience, my feelings, my viewpoint,
your version of the details, too, right?
Yes, has been heard and accepted, and you understand, or they understand, the apologizer, they understand where I'm coming from in a lot of ways. I mean, they don't have to totally accept everything, but just to like validate that they understand that they have a different viewpoint on it, and then they can recognize that I have a different viewpoint on it.
Mm-hmm.
Just that acceptance and validation.
Yeah. So much of the work of resentment processing is that validation. I know I've been working through some tough stuff with our daughter, and she asked me to start repeating back to her what she said to me. And I said, okay, does that mean, if I'm repeating it back to you, does that mean that I am agreeing with what you think needs to happen next? And she said, no, you're just validating not only that you have listening skills, but that you understand my experience as I'm laying it out. And I was shocked at how much progress she and I made just by that simple task of validation. It's very helpful. Mm-hmm. Another key to successful confrontation, to successful resentment processing, is no Darvo. We just did a whole episode on Darvo. Darvo is basically if you bring something to me, Sherry, and say, Matt, I'd like to talk to you about A, and I say, oh yeah? Well, I want to talk to you about B. That's Darvo. Mm-hmm. No place for that. One thing at a time. I'm going to hear your resentment. I'm going to show my good listening skills, and I'm not going to counter with a resentment of my own.
Yeah. And I think it sounds kind of easy in a way, but I think Darvo, I know that like when you Google it and stuff, it says like it's a form of manipulation, but the last part, the reverse victim offender role, I think that comes from hurt people. You know how they say hurt people.
Yeah.
And I think that comes from a place of hurt people, hurt and unheard people that haven't been validated. So just when you are working on keys to confrontation or resentment processing, that hopefully you'll have your turn. Hopefully you'll have your turn to be validated and heard, and then that will make the Darvo a lot easier to avoid.
I think it would be great to start by saying, listen, I'm going to bring this one thing to you. This is not the place for me to hear of your hurts. We'll do that a different time, or at least let me finish everything I have to say. You validate, you do good listening, and then we can talk about your thing. If you want to do, like a tit for tat, that's fine. But it can't be in the middle of it. It can't be oh yeah, well, listen to this.
Right.
And that ground rule needs to be set up top. Because you're right. It sounds more obvious than it is, but when you're in the heat of the moment, especially for someone that's a stuffer, you've got a pile of shit that you'd love to dump on me. And if I start dumping some shit on you, you'll get your shovel out.
I'm a Class A Darvoer and a stuffer.
Yeah. Well, those two go hand in hand, don't you think?
I think so.
You are a pro. Look at you accepting compliments. Good job, Sherry. One thing that's important for me, from my side of it, if you bring a resentment up that we've already talked about in the past, I need to just roll my sleeves back up and process it with you again. A repeated resentment is a sign that the trauma has not been fully processed, that it still hurts, that the wound is still open. And I need to look at that like, okay, this is great. This person is trusting me. Even though she's saying something that I've heard before, she still trusts me enough to talk about it. She's not stuffing it down. And that's a blessing. And I need to look at it that way. And I think a lot of people in my shoes say, God damn it, we already talked about that. How often are you going to bring that up? Are you never going to forgive me for my drink? It's not about forgiving you for your drinking. It's about dealing with an open wound. And just keep doing it as long as it takes. That's my advice. Super important to consider the time factor to confrontation and resentment processing. It needs emotional safety on the back end. Time is a factor. Did you ever, Sherry, when you would open up, you'd be vulnerable, you would express a hurt. In the moment, I would say, oh, that sounds hard. I validate it. I'm sorry that happened. I'm sure that was really painful. Thank you for trusting me with that. Did you ever worry that an hour or a day or a week later, I was going to throw it up in your face?
Yeah, I think that time is a factor, but the quality of time, not just the quantity of time, is what is really the factor. You could have someone who's a dry drunk for 2 to 3 years, and you try to do all this work with them and this resentment processing and, confronting things, and it doesn't matter because they haven't had quality time of sobriety.
Mm-hmm. Well, so like a scenario, so you bring something up that happened back when I was drinking, and I say, yeah, that sounds really hard, and I'm a good listener, and blah, blah, blah. And then 2 days later, we're arguing about the way the dishwasher was loaded. And I say, and you're never going to let me forget that I was an alcoholic. You just brought it up 2 days ago. That just erases all of the resentment processing that we did, right?
Yeah. Not only does it erase the resentment processing, it erases all that trust that you thought you had built up, and that it erases all that like self-confidence to approach and do the resentment processing.
So it's almost like when we process resentments, we do it in pencil, and it's not in ink for a while, right? For some period of time, and time is definitely a factor. Can't define that time for people.
Right.
Probably forever, really. I mean, you never want me to throw something up in your face that I was safe and mature about at one point. Even if years go by, if I throw that up in your face, that's gonna freaking hurt, isn't it?
Yeah.
Worse than if I had just rejected your desire to talk about it in the first place.
I think so too.
Remaining safe long term is really important. So, but while time is a factor in resentment processing, we don't want people to confuse time as part of the resolution for time spent being stuck. The confrontation has to be a part of it, is what I'm saying. You can't just wait it out. Trauma doesn't go away. Resentments don't go away. They have to be confronted and addressed. Yeah. All right. Great. Well, thanks for having this hard conversation with me today, Sherry.
You're welcome.
I promise I will do everything I can to remain safe. I'm feeling a little resentful that you corrected the way I said stuffering or stuffedness or whatever I said. But I'm going to talk to you about that, and then I'm going to be okay, because I know that you will validate my feelings as important. And,
well, I just feel like
worthy.
if I'm the one that's doing it, I know that stuffingness and stuffedness are the things that you say. Yeah.
Well, good thing I got
because they're different.
Good thing I got a pro here with me on
exactly
her own use of the language.
Pro stuffer.
Pro stuffer. I love it. Did you hear something today that is valuable to you? Please support Stigma, the 501c3 organization that brings you the Untoxicated podcast. We know you are listening on your phone. Why not open that Venmo app and send a fully tax-deductible donation to @Matt-Salas with the last 4 digits 1412. $10. It's great. That's @Matt-Salas, last 4 digits 1412. Or you can go to supportuntoxicated.org. That's supportuntoxicated.org. And while you've got your phone open, please go to intoxicatedsurvey.org and click radio buttons to help us learn what you've been through. Those are your assignments for this week. Class dismissed. Thank you for listening to the Untoxicated podcast. You've got this, and we've got you.